session is about lightning talks, and for our next session, I would like to invite Priya Samantji to moderate our lightning talks session here. Just to share, few words about Priya ji. She's is a very, social impact advisor and a change maker in process here. She's a multi-talented professional with experience working on several large initiatives, including some of the presidential campaigns in the US and working with some of the non-profit leaders, C-level executives, and grassroots. So with that, if I may please invite, Priya ji to come and.
Thank you everyone for joining us tonight. Hope you're enjoying the conference, having some meaningful conversations and expanding your networks. The session I'm going to moderate is called Lightning Talks, as it is different from the panel sessions you have attended so far. In the age of digital innovation, where the attention span of human being is dramatically decreasing, the goal of this session is to grab your attention so speakers can convey key information and share their ideas in 6 minutes time frame. Volunteers will come and collect the questions for the speakers. Please address questions to speakers by their names. And at the end of the session, all of us will be on the stage and the volunteers will collect the questions so the audience can ask them. So without any further ado, let's get started. He began his career in development finance and joined the US Treasury Department soon after 9/11/2001 in the global fight against terrorist financing and other illicit financial threats. After a number of years in international banking, he has turned his focus to providing secure financial access to the world's underserved and excluded. Please welcome our first speaker of the night, Amit Sharma.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me okay? 6 minutes, right?
Yes.
I have never done anything in 6 minutes, but I'll try. Priya asked me to talk a little bit about how my upbringing and background has fed into what I'm doing today. So there's 3 or 4 important themes. My father and mother are immigrants to the US from India. And one of the first things that I learned early on was when my father first came here to get his master's, start his life, he was being helped, sent money from his friends and family at home to support him. He then got married to my mother, they both came back, and as they became gainfully employed, they began to sending money home to their friends and family. But importantly, they also were doing everything they could to send my brother and me to the best schools. So not only did they have jobs with established companies, but they were very entrepreneurial. And so as the growth of entrepreneurship has certainly been the talk of the town in the last 5-10 years, really in this community, in the Indian American community, entrepreneurship has been sort of the lifeblood. So that's lesson number 2. How do you get creative about your own entrepreneurship such that you can create a sustainable financial household and sustainable financial business? Which means financial responsibility, financial literacy is paramount. Right? But that is a US and global disease today, right? 50 to 60% of the United States cannot deal with the unintended expense of $400 or more, right? More than 2/3 of the United States, the richest country on the planet, struggle with basic daily, weekly, monthly budgeting. And if you look at this globally, right, 20 to 30% of the United States is either unbanked or underbanked. They can't find a bank account. That is 2.5 to 3.5 billion people globally. That's incredible. And if you think about entrepreneurship and job creation, the future of job creation, 80 to 90% of global job growth is small and medium enterprises. Only less than 1% of small and medium enterprises in the frontier and emerging markets have access to working capital. Right? This is a hugely, hugely important issue. But why does a guy who has a background in counter-terrorist financing get related to this? Because when we started fighting the war on terror through economics, yes, we were looking at networks that facilitated terrorists, drug money launderers, kleptocratic assets, but also we were creating a protective strategy, risk management and compliance, for global banks that all came down to, do we know who we're banking and exclude the illicit actors in the system? It was a very exclusive set of rules, and the net result was debanking or de-risking, pushing out people, institutions out of the banking system. Today, that has fallen disproportionately on the global poor, low moderate income, global remittances, charities that can't get their money to desperate causes, humanitarian causes in need. Those are some of the rules that we put in place. However, this is a huge problem because remittances right now at $400 to $500 billion yearly are 4 times foreign aid. And the World Bank says that in a year to 2 years, it will be more than foreign aid and foreign direct investment combined. And inside 5 years, more than foreign aid, foreign direct investment, and all capital markets flows. You and I sending money to other markets is the lifeblood for the emerging and frontier markets. So what we're trying to do today in combining entrepreneurship, financial health, literacy, and responsibility, and civic engagement is we're redefining financial access as more inclusionary, taking advantage of the global growth in mobile technology, and even in some of the emerging markets where you have 80 to 90% mobile penetration rates that can be the last mile of engagement. Number 2, taking advantage of institutions that have never been financial institutions but are today. Amazon, Apple, Google, these are all banks, and none of them are regulated like banks. So applying the same risk and compliance controls and then connect them to the United States banking system. At the end of the day, if we do this right, any institution, any individual can get a US dollar denominated FDIC insured account and access it on their phone. And by doing that, that financial access begets a much more sustainable future, a build of economic resilience, and that's the true national security objective we have. Thanks for your time.
She has been a leader in public health for over 5 years. Her work in advocacy, substance abuse prevention, and other public health fields allowed her to go to the United Nations in Vienna and at the White House to have discussion with President Trump. She is here not only to share her story, but her advice on how youth can get more involved in their communities. Please welcome Ananya Patti.
Thank you, Priya, for that introduction. I want to begin by saying good evening and namaskar to all of you. I want to also thank you for being here and thank you for giving me the opportunity to show you why youth advocacy is so incredibly important in our society today. You see, youth advocacy is not something that's necessarily new to our society, but it's something that I think manifests in a very different way than it had in generations before. Youth, now more than ever, are starting to realize that they aren't the leaders of tomorrow. Let me repeat myself because you might be confused as to why I said that. Youth, now more than ever, are starting to realize that they are not the leaders of tomorrow. Why is that, you ask? That is because youth are the leaders of today. Their age does not make them any less of a change agent than their elders are. And please allow me to show you why this is. My journey as a youth advocate in the field of substance misuse prevention began over 5 years ago. As a freshman in high school, I brought together over 100 youth who were just as passionate about this cause as I was. Now, this group called Catalyst later grew to have almost around 200 members from the middle schools that fed into the high school that I went to. A vital part of the beginning of my journey was realizing the fact that I could not tackle this entire epidemic alone. I started to attend national conferences by the Community Anti-Drug Coalitions of America, which brings together a bunch of people who are just as passionate about this cause as I was as well. Now, CADCA's Youth Leadership Department trains tens of thousands of youth every year in different curriculums, giving them skills to become leaders and agents of change in their community. I later had the privilege of becoming a trainer and consultant to CADCA, and now have the opportunity to travel for work as a consultant and equip young leaders with the skills they need to become the change agents they want to create community-level change. Through CADCA, I've worked with thousands of young leaders across the world, given speeches to thousands of people on Capitol Hill, created curriculums on advocacy and policy, and much more. And as a young advocate, I was able to get Tobacco 21, a law that raises the age of purchasing tobacco from 18 to 21, passed in several municipalities in the Chicagoland area, as well as now the state of Illinois. Now, all of these things, thank you. All of these things, though, don't define me as a leader. This is because what defines a leader is not his or her resume, but more the passion and intention that drives the work that he or she does. I wake up during every work trip I take knowing that this is my purpose and I am here to fulfill it on this earth. This may be my calling, and I must do all that I can to fulfill it right now and save the lives of those who are susceptible to this preventable disease of addiction. In finding ways to complete my mission, I found myself in the seat with the name tag Ananya Petit, United States Youth Delegate, when I was at the United Nations in Vienna last year, or Ananya Petit, United States representative of CADCA, when I sat next to the president in a roundtable discussion discussing the importance of youth advocacy and grassroots efforts. These experiences did not just shape me as a person, but as a leader, looking to guide others to fulfill this everlasting fuel and passion inside of me. These experiences taught me that this journey will need for me to collaborate with people from different backgrounds, speaking different languages, and many more differences. And at the end of the day, what matters the most is the positive change we create with youth who have purpose and passion in their hearts. Yesterday, I returned from giving a week-long training in the Philippines. I am incredibly jet-lagged, I'm sorry, that's why this isn't memorized. With 21 different Filipino communities represented at that conference, I was able to learn about the deeply devastating epidemic going on over there surrounding what they call shabu, or what we call here methamphetamine. The 60 youth, however, that I had the privilege of training took it upon themselves to soak up every part of the things that I trained, asking incredibly valuable questions to create and refine the skills that they gained from our conference. Every coalition, in fact, almost every youth, to be honest, had a plan of action that they were going to implement, everything from educating their community to changing and creating new policies. Now, as I left that conference in the Philippines, I had nothing but faith that the nation will see a brighter tomorrow because of the work that the young leaders were doing today. As a young leader, my job is to not only change our current system, change our state and as a society and our future, but also enable those around me to do the same. When I envision a leader, what I envision is a little different than what a lot of people do. See, I don't envision one strong person with a lot of people behind them. I envision one caring and passionate person guiding a lot of people in front of them into the right path. What I'm hoping to create as a leader and as a trainer for CADCA is a society where even more youth leaders utilize their power and their influential voice to inspire and develop others. This domino effect will lead to an incredibly more motivated and passionate youth standing so that we can create more change. Now, as all of us here go back into our homes and our places in our society after this conference, let us find ways to spread our faith, our purpose, and our passion to help youth. There is youth out there who can create incredible amounts of change with the skills that we have in this room and the guidance that we have to offer. I would like to leave you with an idea I've had for quite some time now. I know this quote that I'm going to say is quite familiar to you, but just hold on for a sec. Mahatma Gandhi once said, "Be the change you wish to see in the world." And I completely agree with his words, but I believe that we can elevate this to the next level. I believe that we must not only be the change, but inspire others to also be the change and empower them to change that, spread that change alongside us as well. Thank you.
She is a freshman at Boston University, and her major passion is learning a 2,500-year-old folk art called Madhubani or Mithila. This art is said to date back to the time of Ramayana, when King Janak asked his artist to capture his daughter Sita's wedding to Prince Ram. She is the recipient of the apprenticeship grant from the Mass Cultural Council and has participated in many art shows. Please join me to welcome Anandita Lal.
Thank you so much for having me today. So, as we all know, I'm sure, in today's day and age, it's very easy to access all sorts of information via technology. But something that I've learned along the way while learning about Madhubani is that it's equally important to learn about our traditions and maintain those. So Madhubani art originated in Bihar, which, as you all know, is in northern India around 2,500 years ago. And this art form began as a way for the women in the villages to be able to pass on their history and their stories from mother to daughter. The women would typically do this art using flower juices to make paint, and they did this on the walls of their huts. For a long time, this art was undiscovered by most Western influences until a team of explorers found the remains of these walls in an earthquake that had shattered everything and brought it back up. And so in the villages, because this art form was very specific to the women, it became a means of empowerment for women between mother to daughter as they used this art form as their own source of income, as a way to support themselves and their families while the men would be out working in the fields. And so my personal journey with Madhubani started around 5 years ago when I was introduced to my guru, Sanandaji, and I'd been interested in art for my entire life, and Madhubani in particular caught my interest because of the level of incredible detail and color that just goes into this. And as I learned, I fell more in love with the vibrant colors, the detail in the hatching and the borders of this art, and the symbolic figures that go into making it. If any of you all noticed, there's a lot of work out in display outside this room, and basically, after applying for this apprenticeship, we focused on maintaining this dying art form since not many people actually know about it. And so I was thinking about how to bring awareness of this art form to people who weren't so exposed. And the way I thought to go about this was to make it more accessible to people who may not know about Indian mythology and other things like that. And so what I did as a progression throughout my learning process of Madhubani, I started with the more traditional pieces and moved on to more contemporary pieces and bringing sort of more Western influences into the art. So one of the most traditional pieces is the Kobhar, which is the wedding painting. It's typically done in all red to symbolize good luck and not have any bad influences on the wedding. And then as I learned, I went from traditional things like the Kobhar or a scene of Ram and Sita's wedding to slightly more contemporary pieces, like doing a scene from the movie Aladdin, but in a Madhubani style, so that young kids would come to the exhibits and know what they're looking at, and that would get their interest. And then I would be able to sort of pass my love for this art onto them through a medium that they were familiar with. Going forward, I also did a painting of a lion in a more Western style, but the mane I did with the hatching that's typically used in Madhubani to show how sort of Western styles don't necessarily have to be separate from Indian art styles like Madhubani. They can go hand in hand. And as I've sort of gone through this process and had these workshops and exhibitions, a lot of people have found common ground with me, even comparing Madhubani to the art form of mandalas and Zentangles. And so in the process of having these workshops, what I discovered is that I really liked being able to share just the passion and joy I had from Madhubani with other people who might not necessarily want to pursue it, but it could become a really good common ground of interest and something that they could eventually find passion in as well. Because as I'm sure a lot of you know, art is very therapeutic and it's a really good means of self-expression. And so at one of my workshops, I was able to see 3 generations of one family just sitting and peacefully working on art together. And to this day, it's an image that just sticks in my head because of sort of just the power that art has to bring people together over this sort of common interest. And so as I go at BU, I'm still trying to go forward and find more ways to spread this art. particularly in terms of art therapy. I would really like to explore further the powers that art can have in relieving pain and sort of being this healing art form through the means of self-expression for people. And so, going back to what I said in the beginning, for me, Madhubani has become a really an amazing form of self-expression and empowerment through the history that it once was and more into the modern fusion that I'm trying to make it. And so I've discovered along the way that it's really important to always be learning new things, but at the same time, it's equally important to be able to maintain our traditions, especially those that bring us joy. Thank you.
Thank you so much. She won the Scripps National Spelling Bee in 1999. She did not expect the intense interest and the pride the Indian American community would take in her win. She is currently a second-year resident in neurology at Rhode Island Hospital, the Warren Alpert Medical School. Please welcome Nupur Lala.
Hi, thank you all so much for having me. I'm Nupur Lala. I'm a second-year neurology resident at Rhode Island Hospital and Brown University. And today I'd like to talk to you about 3 aspects of my experience as a young Hindu American, and to emphasize that I don't think there's been any better time to be a young Hindu American who is on the path to success. So to start my talk, before I started spending my days seeing patients and thinking about brains all day, I won the Scripps National Spelling Bee in 1999. Thank you all so much. And as part of that win, I was featured in a documentary called Spellbound. And Spellbound used spelling bees as a metaphor for the American dream. The filmmakers asked me at that time, why did I work so hard in spelling bees? And I recall the example of my parents who came as young academics in the early 1980s to America, and the opportunities they seized and the sacrifices they made in order to create a better life for my brother and I. And I repeated something that they had said to us periodically as we had grown up. I said, there are no second chances in India. And I think growing up with that sense of opportunity and what they had inculcated in us is an advantage that Hindu Americans as a whole carry with us, this sense of opportunity. And that brings me to my second point. I've also had periods where reaching a goal seemed very uncertain. For me, the spelling bee was one of those. I placed 81st the first time I competed in the Scripps National Spelling Bee. Let's just say the press is not chasing you down for a performance like that. And at that point, I realized that, I had to draw upon something deeper. So I was reminded of a central tenet of Hinduism. This is raised in texts like the Bhagavad Gita, that one should work without attention to reward, that work in and of itself is the reward. And that brought me a lot of solace, and it made an experience rewarding regardless of the prize money or trophy involved. And I think that's something as well that young Hindu Americans can carry with us, this deep tradition of working for the sense of betterment and fulfillment. And that brings me to my final point this evening. I didn't grow up in an area with a lot of Indian Americans or a lot of Hindu Americans. And a very touching and moving part of winning was the interest and the embrace of the greater Hindu community at large. I realized something very deep, that when one of us succeeds, all of us succeed as Hindus. And this is something that I took with me and that I've seen, this stronger sense of community. One example in which it's borne out in my life is spelling bees. So at this point, I've seen that through very deep friendships I cultivated in the spelling bee, and seeing this greater community that's risen with this ethos of success for one, success for all. The last 24 of 25 spelling bee champions have been Indian American. And I don't think that's entirely coincidence. And so to tie it all together, if I could leave you with 3 things from my experience tonight, I think the first would be the sense that we come from a culture and from a tradition in which opportunity is seized, and we are encouraged to seize it. That's a big advantage. The second is the sense of working for personal fulfillment and betterment, regardless of reward, which I think is very deep. And then the third is, a point that was very well made by Swami Vivekananda that, oneness is everything in this sense of collective success. Thank you all for having me, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.
She is a pioneering economist and a technology futurist. Her work lies at the intersection of emerging technologies, economic science, and business strategy. She is a fellow at MIT Media Labs and is the founder and CEO of Rethinks Market, a global think tank focused on the economics of emerging technologies. Please welcome Navroop Sahdev.
Thank you so much, Priya, for the introduction as well as inviting me to this conference. I was asked to tell the story of my life, but I'm here to tell you of the dangers of a lopsided story. It's not that the American culture is broken or that Hinduism has answers or leadership to provide to America or the world in general. I think the problem with the world is that there aren't enough female leaders. Until this morning, I was thinking of sharing 2 or 3 key ideas that define my story and usually define the story of other people as well: identity, imagination, and action. We do these series of conferences at MIT Media Lab as well as the World Economic Forum at Davos every year. We call them Imagination in Action. And as I heard panelists today, all day, I realized those ideas, the fact that intentional action leads to, intentional imagination leads to powerful action has already probably been covered. And it has been talked about. But again, I think what we are lacking is there aren't enough female leaders. And by enough, I mean at least 50% or more. And many of you in the room, scholars in Hinduism and those who have the shared experience of being in the US and born and raised in India, would be quick to point out that Hinduism is a very balanced religion. It talks about duality, it talks about worshiping goddesses, about the feminine being just as important as the masculine. I'm aware of the idea and the notion of Ardhanarishwar, which is the combined male and female. At the end of the day, that duality doesn't exist, right? But really, none of that matters if the experience of those women living and breathing around you is replete with discrimination, sexual harassment, and abuse. And so if you look inward, like all the speakers have mentioned, I have the same message. We need to ask ourselves, how is it that we are perpetuating inequality between males and females through our conscious as well as unconscious actions? Patriarchy continues to crush half of the population, and women continue to be treated as subhumans. It is striking that when I was in India, I couldn't do the things I wanted to do. In fact, now that I'm not in India, I'm in a society that is more liberal, and that is the gift of America. I'm able to discover my own roots, where I come from, and the gifts that I have because of where I am from. And it is this beautiful thing that I think everybody in this room shares, but that's not enough, right? And I think if there is one defining thing in my life, that is that I did not let my gender stop me from pursuing my passions and my dreams. I mean, the Me Too movement has helped a lot in bringing strength to the community, and by community, I mean 50% of the global population. So if you want to learn grit, if you want to learn perseverance, resilience, and entrepreneurship, well, look at women. Learn it from them. I feel at home here in this room, but it's a crazy world out there, right? And 6% of all funding, for example, venture capital goes to women and no more. Less than 1% goes to our Black population. The salary gap, and this is a study that just came out last week from Carta. I met Emily Kramer, who led this study, has been covered by all 70 major publications and more. She mentioned that the salary gap in the United States is 94 cents to $1, but the equity gap is 49 cents to $1. If you look at my profession in economics, the number of females studying economics at college level are half the number of men. Right? Look around yourself. There are 43 speakers that are male and 27 female. Out of that, 12 of them are in this panel. So, Priya, congratulations for your leadership. And if it weren't for that, there would only be 1/4 the number of female speakers in this conference. So, teach inclusion. This has implications for research. This has implications for the kind of questions we ask and the kind of results we are able to achieve. And for women in particular, and with my initiative on Rethink Markets, if you want to build a better world, well, you have to sit at the table. You have to roll up your sleeves and build that world, right? And, you know, coming back to the idea of identity, my first identity is that I'm a woman. And there's nothing more inspiring for me to look at badass women who are changing the world. Imagination, as the second part of the thesis, has been a sticky word in my imagination, in my psyche over the past two years in particular. And I'm enthralled by the sheer power of human imagination as a driver for affecting change. And everything around that you see has been imagined by someone other than the natural world. And so we take this for granted. The world we inherit is that's the way things are, or that's the way the world works. Well, not really. Someone imagined it. So the question for everyone is, can we imagine better? And coming to the final thesis, the final part of the thesis is action, particularly intentional action. The question I want to leave everyone with is, what kind of action does better imagination inspire? Thank you very much.
She is particularly interested in studying how identities are shaped through systems of power and resilience. She's passionate about expanding the buzzwords of diversity and inclusion to actually enable all the people to bring their whole and authentic selves wherever they go. She's pursuing law because she views it as a tool to effect systemic change. Please welcome Roma Gujarati.
Thank you, Priyaji. Good evening, everyone. As I'm sure many of us did, I grew up with a large Indian family friend group, and I also grew up with a temple community. So throughout my life, I had a lot of chances to wear Indian attire. As a little girl, I recall viewing the bindi, or in my Gujarati mother tongue, the chandlo, as simply an accessory to my Indian clothes. Every time I wore them, I would just stick a matching chandlo on. And as a young girl, I didn't realize or register the rich meaning behind the small red dot. As I grew older and became more involved with my faith, I learned the meaning behind this red dot. In Hinduism, we believe in chakras, or focal points of energies in our body. Of the chakras, the Ajna chakra rests between the two eyebrows, and it is known as the third eye. It is considered to exist at the intersection of the physical world, our conscious mind, and the subconscious mind. It is in reverence to this chakra that we apply our Chandlo here. So the Chandlo then is a bridge, symbolizing the convergence of our existence in this physical world and the realm of the supreme reality. We Hindus believe everyone and everything is a creation of the Supreme Being, and that He is omnipresent in all of us, residing in each of our souls. Hence, the Chandlo is a reminder of the divine presence in all of us, who hears all, sees all, guides all. Understanding the meaning behind this Chandlo has given me a heightened appreciation for the red dot. In my BAPS Swaminarayan sect specifically, we are taught that the Chandlo is worn every day by all devotees as a symbol of our devotion, to signify that we are followers of our Lord Swaminarayan and our Guru, Param Pujya Mahant Swami Maharaj. But this observance always felt daunting. It's one thing to have my Chandlo accompany my Indian outfits, but every day, to school, to work. And I grappled with these qualms for a really long time. But after some introspection, I have come to the following conclusion, which I would love to share with you all today. My most salient anxiety in applying the Chandlo every day is the fear of what people will think. This anxiety stems from an innate apprehension of being different, of being part of the out crowd. But this is a foolish fear. By default, I already appear different from most of my American counterparts. My hair color, my skin color, these are two very distinguishable and immutable traits that quite perceptibly already give away my ethnicity. Simply put, I look different because I am different. And why should I be ashamed of that? If I'm scared of looking different, then what I'm really saying is I'm scared of being who I actually am. And I don't like the sound of that. In today's age of diversity and inclusion, why should I myself suppress my own identity just to fit in? Yes, I am Indian in this American space. And yes, I am Hindu in this space mainly influenced by Abrahamic theology. So what? I am who I am, and I'm so proud of that. But I'm also not naive. I understand we live in a world where people are still judged for their looks. And I know I will inevitably meet people who will judge me for my Chandlo, who may not even respect or appreciate it. But why should I care what those people think? I want to surround myself with people who value authenticity. And my faith is a large part of who I am. People in my inner circle will know that. If someone's first reaction is to see my Chandlo and think negatively of me, they would never have belonged in my close group anyways. Rather, the people who see my Chandlo, ask genuine questions about it, want to get to know me as a person, those are my kind of people. In this sense, then, my Chandlo serves as a repellent of negative energy, and that's a good riddance for me. I've reached a realization that there is no need to be scared of what others will think or say about my red dot. So, after much reflection, I have resolved to apply my Chandlo every single day. And when I feel this commitment wavering, all I have to do is visualize my gurus, to whom I belong. They infuse me with understanding, courage, and most importantly, faith. At the end of the day, I live to earn their happiness, and this is just one small way I can do that while also immensely strengthening my own sense of self in the process. Today, People express their identities in all sorts of ways: clothing, hairstyles, tattoos, so many more. My chanlo is my self-proclaimed identity marker. Every time I look in the mirror, and let's be real, I do that a lot, I see my red dot. I am reminded of my gurus and my God. I am reminded of my true identity. So that's my story of the red dot and me. In essence, the red dot is me, because it serves as a steadfast example of both who I am and whose I am. Thank you.
She is a model, a pageant queen, a black belt in karate, a dancer, an engineer, and an optimist. She believes the best way in life is to be jack of all trades rather than the master of one. She also believes that someone's passions and dreams should not be subdued based on gender, socioeconomics, or racial backgrounds. Please welcome Shireen Bakre.
Hello, I'm Shireen Bakre, and I'm here to be heard. Now, before I go into what I want to talk about, let me do a quick little introduction. I'm 20 years old, I go to Boston University, and I'm a biomedical engineer. Now, I'd like to say that I suffer with a passion. Now, with this statement, I mean that I'm in love with what I do, and I know that when you love something, you put in as much effort and time and dedication into it. Now, back into my talk. I'm going to be talking about something near and dear to me today: girls in STEM. Now, I'm not saying that we should discourage boys from being in the STEM field. I feel like they're being motivated and encouraged enough, and I feel like that same treatment isn't given to girls at all. So I feel like engineering isn't, and it shouldn't be, assigned by gender. It celebrates ingenuity, curiosity, and intelligence. Thus, I didn't believe that at all. When I started high school, I had the prejudice and the belief that engineering was set for that one standard, that singular mold, that it should be set for a boy who's nerdy, who might be socially anxious. And I never felt like I belonged there. I never felt that I was in that mold. So my friends asked me to come to the first robotics meeting. I was like, fine. I know for a fact that my parents always pushed me to try new things, to let opportunities come, and just see where it takes you. So I went to the first meeting, and surprisingly enough, I was overwhelmed. There were a lot of sweaty boys around who knew exactly what they're doing, and so many other people tossing out words like WD-40, C-channel, 1713 Allen wrench, and I was so confused. I was incredibly overwhelmed, and I felt so out of my element. I just wanted to leave, and I knew for a fact that this is where this is gonna stop. I knew where I wanted to be, and this wasn't it. That was until I saw it. This mechanical beast, this thing growling into life, walking around in front of me, rolling around, climbing a ladder, and I thought, this is incredible. How did they do this? It was the robot, and the captain of the team at the moment was giving us all a speech about how he built it, how they came together as a team to build this monstrosity, to have it defeat the other robots, to challenge itself and to challenge each other, to dream, to bring it to life. And that's when I knew that this is what I want to do. That piqued my curiosity, and all of a sudden there was a passion ignited inside of me. I knew at the moment there was a lot lacking in me. There was a lot of prejudice, there was a lot of bias, and I was very scared. I was in an element that I clearly didn't belong in, not yet. So days went by, weeks went by, years went by. Of course, there were moments where I wanted to quit, but every moment I thought about that, I also thought about how I wanted to be like that one captain who was so confident and so proud to have built that beast. So I asked the questions. I was stupid for moments. I didn't know what an Allen wrench was, but I learned. I took my time, and I knew it will take time. And then 4 years later, I was captain of that robotics team. I had built, thank you. I had built this monstrosity, and I was proud of it. And I was proud to spread that awareness that you can dream, that you don't have to be afraid. And if you are, it's okay to take that jump. Now, it wasn't easy. Not only did I have my own robotics team to worry about, where there were a lot of boys, and unfortunately, a lot of them had a superiority complex where they felt they knew things better, which is fine, because I knew even more. So that was fine. I worked with the mentors, and I had to prove to them that I know what I'm doing, that I will take the time, that I will put so much effort into this because I loved it. Then came competitions. That's when you meet other robotics teams. That's when you meet other mentors that you get to see from other states, other countries. And that's where it got hard, because that's where I was belittled. That's where it became incredibly overwhelming. I had to prove my worth, and I had to put in that extra effort. And that was fine, because I knew for a fact that I loved what I was doing. And then I thought to myself, there are other girls here, and they're going through the same thing. Whether or not they'd have to voice their opinions, whether or not they made it this far, this story is probably the same over and over again. And I wanted that to change. So I started the first ever all-girls middle school robotics team. Now, I knew this was a step in the right direction because there were girls within the middle school that were so curious about these robots that they wanted to do it themselves. So when we started, it was hard. They felt very overwhelmed, and they felt they weren't nearly as good as the boys' teams, which was fine. They didn't have to be good. All they have to do is enjoy themselves and enjoy what they were doing. I was able to ignite a passion within them that I had, and I was proud to say that they were curious as well. And seeing that made me happy. So I stand in front of you today to help me start a conversation. There is a field out there that celebrates creativity, ingenuity, intelligence. So we should do our best to allow anyone to join that field, to allow girls to be motivated, encouraged, and inspired to take part in that field, to follow their dreams and not let society stop them. Thank you.
She was born in a family of music lovers and has received guidance from several eminent Hindustani classical musicians. So how many of you enjoy or are curious about Indian classical music in this room? Nice. Do you want to learn the power of Indian music? Yeah. Yes. So let's welcome our next speaker, Suchita Rao.
Thank you, Priya. Friends, why do you think we love music? I'll take one answer. Why do we love music? It soothes your mind. Louder, please. Why do you love music? It's the breath of the universe. That's poetic. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. We love music because it connects us to our emotions. It connects us to our feelings. And I want to talk a little about Indian music because I have the pleasure, the privilege, the honor of being able to share my love for music with people here who live in Boston, little children who are as little as 3 years old and who ask me questions like, Auntie, can there be a rhythm cycle of 2? Or can there be a rhythm cycle of 3.5? Or can there be a rhythm cycle of 10.5? And what is the maximum number of beats there can be in a tal? Can it be like 1 billion? So little children getting excited about music makes me very excited too. And we have a very precious heritage that the Indian classical music heritage has survived for multiple centuries. Through so many decades, so many changes in history with invasions, right from the time of Indus Valley civilization. I have 2 posters out, and I would be very grateful if you took a look at, the history of Indian classical music. But from Indus Valley civilization time, from sacred chants in the Vedas to developing scales, to developing ragas. Ragas are melodies that are more than scales. They have character, they have personality, they're like people. You get to know them, and then you sing them, and you feel happy. Now, music, as I said, connects us to our emotions. You have happy ragas, you know, the ones that make you feel happy. These use shuddh, or regular notes. And the moment there are flat notes or komal notes, they make you feel a little sad, right? Yes. So this is about melody, and we have very interesting ornamentation in Indian music. Like you would have, the reason why Indian music is so special is because it lives between notes. It traverses these, you know, so many different shrutis, so many different microtones between notes. So unlike a piano where, you know, you might hit sa, re, ga, staccata, you can go sa, re, ga, ma, pa, da. You're traveling between notes. So that's what is interesting about Indian music. Now rhythm cycles, again, we have very complex rhythm cycles. So like I said, odd numbered beats, that's something very unique. 7-beat cycles, 9-beat cycles, 11-beat cycles, and so on. Half, 10 and a half. Quite a challenge, you know, to be able to sing a song in a 10 and a half beat cycle or to play a, you know, melody in a 10 and a half beat cycle. So that's beautiful, complex rhythms that, you know, we've had for multiple centuries, and we continue to make and experiment and learn and explore that science. Then beautiful language in our compositions, elegant language. We heard the speaker just a little back, Anand Venkatramanji, who spoke about the Durga Shlok, right? Beautiful, elegant language that immediately connects you to the divinity within you. So the highest goal of our music, any classical music, Western classical music, Indian classical music, any kind of music, is to connect one's soul to the human divinity within us. And Indian classical music, I believe, does a really great job. And one other really important thing about Indian classical music is that, you know, improvisation, spontaneous improvisation. Children are taught from when they are babies, you know, to do, what can you do with sa, re? They go, you can do re, sa. All right, let's add some repetition. Sa, re, re, sa, re, sa, re. So many different permutations and combinations just with 2 notes. And the moment a little child can present an idea, they feel this tremendous sense of confidence and self-esteem that they can create, that they can compose. And really, it is a wonderful thing to feel that you can create and you can compose, and it does wonders to your esteem and creates so much joy. So I would encourage, what should I say? I would encourage everybody to, you know, put their composer's hat on every now and then and explore and see what they can do with music, and also introduce little children to the ideas that you might have and ask them, can you compose? What's the tune you made? What's the poem that you made? And just spread happiness all around. Music is, you know, it connects us to our emotions, and Indian music in particular, I feel, is a strong, a very well-researched, a very well-developed science and art. And I am so glad that I can share my joy of music with people around me. Thank you for your time.
She is an award-winning entrepreneur, an investor, and a mindful living coach. Her life, career, and thinking represents a unique blend of Western technology and business leadership with Eastern philosophy and culture. Please welcome Sonpreet Bhatia.
Thanks, Priya. So in Silicon Valley, we have a saying that the 3 biggest lies are, the third lie is when someone owes you money and they say the check is in the mail. The second lie is when you go to a doctor and they have a big syringe in their hand and they say, this is not going to hurt at all. And the biggest lie is when an AI developer tells you that AI is going to save the world and the world is going to be wonderful hereafter. We know that AI brings its good and its bad. We've seen both facets so far, and we will see more going forward. With AI, many smart people like Elon Musk, Hawkins, and more say that there are dire warnings coming with AI, but AI is also a force for good. And I'll cite some examples of how. Just to give you my background, I started as a scientist at IBM, moved on to be a vice president on Wall Street, and then moved on to run 2 companies in AI, and now I sit on the other side as an investor looking at these companies. I've lived 3 lives. As a researcher at IBM, we didn't see the fruit of our labor for years. And at that time, AI was called neural networks, and the fancy name is now artificial intelligence. On Wall Street, it's a quarter-driven industry where you see the fruit of your labor every quarter. Moving on to building these companies where you have to be on the go every single moment. And that brings you on your toes, talking to your customers every single day. So it feels like a whole journey of itself. So I know that there are good and bad examples of every technology that comes into play. Now, if we look at transportation, we've seen examples of autonomous cars. In manufacturing, there are AI robots working alongside humans. In healthcare, although it's in nascent stages, we see that this predictive analytics and AI around what diseases are happening. Plus, we'll also see robots actually operating on us and removing our teeth as dentists. In education, this facial recognition, when a child studies, AI will be able to say whether they're liking the subject or not liking the subject. And this is how personalized education comes into play. With media, we know that this personalized media coming to us every single day, and it's also growing. In customer service, Google has human-like calls now. I advise on Homeland Security's fund, VC fund also, and we see so many examples of AI in public safety, where our first responders need help with AI-like systems to go out and keep us safe and be safe themselves. I had a fantastic conversation with Ash Carter on defense, and he assured me that we will never have robots going fighting for our country. We'll always have human-assisted AI, which is a big relief. Forecasting floods, agriculture. You know, with global warming, climate change, and water pollution on the rise, we don't want to add on to world hunger. TechCrunch says that 40% of our crops die out of diseases, and that, of course, is less yield. There's a company in India building AI for agriculture technology that increases yield and also looks at these defects. AI can be very powerful in agriculture in poor countries. Now, AI will also impact the workforce. Study says that 180 million jobs for women will be affected in the next 20 years. That's 70% more than men. If we look at the pyramid, on top is what we have as leadership, and there are less and less women. So 180 million jobs is a big number. But workers can be retrained for new and more interesting jobs. Jack Ma says that with AI, our work weeks are going to look shorter and shorter. And I have 1 more minute. And what that means is there'll be more jobs created as far as helping people live a better life, as we saw some examples, citing some examples of what happiness means. There is a company that's building an AI platform that's training people or reskilling people as full stack developers who don't even have a degree. Now that is very, very powerful. Now my question is, what if you decide to design an AI program that's with you all the time and is changing lives of every person in a positive way? I believe AI can become the combination of a life coach, a health coach, storyteller, and psychotherapist. I believe AI can be the magic genie for you and learns what you like and gets smarter and smarter at how to help you solve every problem, from sleepless nights to stress on the jobs. I believe AI will also soon be able to bridge cultures as well. Many of us in this room live that example of bridging East and West. We have both heritages. We combine both ideals within ourselves. AI will do something similar. It will merge the science and technology from the West and the time-tested wisdom and spiritual insights of the East. Today, AI is already doing things that require, for anyone who's doing creativity, that's humans, to do. AI is playing games of artistic strategy and winning. AI is writing poetry and novels. AI is painting pictures. Some of it is actually pretty good. Tomorrow, AI will go much, much further. AI will combine compassion and data, wisdom and processing speed, inspiration and machine learning. Now, the day is not far when we'll have Albert Einstein right in front of us and having a conversation with him, or anybody that's of your inspiration. Right now, AI is of the intelligence of an ant, and the day it becomes an intelligence of a chimpanzee, that is the day to, of course, be excited about it, but also be aware. So where do we start? What do we do? Some of you people in this room are playing a leading part in making this happen. This is a future we can have if we want to pursue it responsibly. I begin my talk by talking about the 3 biggest lies. I'm going to talk about the 1 biggest truth. The future belongs to the bold, the visionary, and the ethical. Thank you.
Our next speaker is a full-time project management and a Vedic mathematics geek who steals time to volunteer for social causes. She is actively engaged in dialogue with her town residents in suburbs of Massachusetts to help them understand and appreciate India's rich culture, values, and traditions. Multi-switching is her life. Please welcome Swati Dave.
Thank you, Priya. Namaste. Every beginning is a story. My work in and with Vedic math is a story too. In May 2011, my mom passed away suddenly. In September 2011, the company that I was working for with 5 years closed suddenly. During this period, nothing made sense. I was struggling. I don't remember the exact moment, the day, the time, when I decided to study ancient Indian mathematics. I had briefly studied Bharati Krishna Tirthaji's mathematics in 2006. I got lost unraveling the beautiful math from these ancient texts, and it seemed like sanity was finally returning. One thing led to the other. I started teaching this math as an after-school program in the local schools. Students seemed to be enjoying this new approach to math. Math was no longer boring. It was fun and exciting. I was keen to take this to the conventional math classrooms and quickly realized that this is not easy. To better understand the challenges, I conducted a global survey and in 2015, presented my findings at the World Sanskrit Conference in Bangkok. After the conference, I firmly believed that to promote this math, we needed a global platform where similar-minded people could talk to each other. James Glover, whom I had met at the conference, shared my vision too. And we formally established a nonprofit for the advancement of Vedic mathematics in early 2016. James is a high school math teacher and has a deep understanding of ancient Indian mathematics, particularly Tirthaji's mathematics and Advait philosophy. To promote research in ancient mathematics, we conduct one in-person and one online conference every year. The best part of these conferences is that I get to meet and discuss the research and work of passionate scholars from different countries like South Africa, Israel, Spain, Japan, Italy, Philippines, Singapore, Nepal, US, UK, etc. It is inspiring to hear scholars passionately share their studies, from stimulating topics like Mahaviracharya's Ganitasara, Pingalacharya's Chandashastra, applications of graph theory in ancient Indian shlokas, and more practical applications of Vedic mathematics to digital electronics. In August 2018, we got an opportunity to conduct workshops for around 300 teachers and 1,500 students in Philippines. And this August, we set our foot in South Africa, where we conducted workshops for around 1,300 students and did an intensive 3-day immersion program for 200 student teachers at the Northwest University. The common thread that I observed as I introduced this math to the teachers and students in the US, Philippines, South Africa, and India was that quite early in their schooling, most students, adults, learn to hate math or believe that they cannot do math. The math they're talking about here is the math taught in schools in these countries, which is Eurocentric mathematical pedagogy. To help the students who dislike math, educators need to look for alternative approach and develop a broader understanding of what constitutes mathematics. I believe that, like language and social studies, the study of mathematics should aim to engage ideas from different cultures across the world. These explorations will help students acknowledge that there are different ways of doing math, and they will be amazed to see the radically different approaches to learning math that have existed in the world. I acknowledge that to integrate ethnomathematics or Vedic mathematics in the school curriculum is a tough battle. But my goal is for teachers to be able to use this as an effective tool in their math classrooms to help all students, those who enjoy math, as well as those who struggle with it. Giving each student a choice in learning can make all the difference. Another aspect that I've been working on is conducting brain workshops, brain exercises at senior centers. These workshops are a combination of fun and easy Vedic mental math techniques, mindfulness using magic squares, creativity with column drawings, and challenging them with puzzles from past and present cultures across the world. Today, as I trace my journey, I feel blessed to have discovered my passion for my Indian roots. My heart swells with pride when I hear kids in South Africa recite the Sanskrit sutras, when a teacher in Philippines is excited to take this approach to her class, when a young girl in Hyderabad says that she's proud to be Indian, and when a senior woman in Boston comes to me and says that, I wish growing up you were my math teacher. Our heritage speaks for itself. The most common rule of math is that if it seems easy, you're doing it wrong. I would like to change it to the new rule of math. If it seems easy, you're doing Vedic math. Thank you.
From Delhi to Hollywood, software engineer turned director, producer, writer, editor, voiceover artist, she tells the hilarious stories of her hyphenated identity. Her films have played at numerous film festivals and won awards. She aims to make an impact in the world by telling deeply emotional stories with social political resonance. Please welcome Swati Srivastav.
Yes, I will take it. Thank you, Priya. Can you hear me in the back? Everybody? Okay. My name is Swati Srivastav, and I'm a filmmaker. Oh, thank you very much. That helped. And a storyteller. So I am here to tell you a story, the story of the hyphen. Now, being immigrants, we all have a hyphenate identity. Some hyphens are much desired, for example, Hindu-American, while others a little less so. For example, I'm a director, producer, writer, editor, which can sound cool, but in the independent filmmaking world, it can often mean we didn't have the budget to hire 4 different people. Now, for those of you who would like to free me of this sometimes forced hyphenate identity by investing in my movies, and we do need support and investment from our community, please come see me later. And then there are those hyphens that we acquire in life that become part of our very being. I grew up in India in a regular Hindu-Indian family. My father was a well-read, educated man who, in a very Hindu way, encouraged me to read books from various traditions so I could find my own truth. So after I had read Ramcharitmanas and Bhagavad Gita and Mahabharata and the Old Testament and the New Testament and parts of Quran, I must have surprised him when I announced to him that of all the gods in the universe, of all the many gods in the universe, Jesus was my favorite. And it was my wish to wear a cross. Well, that year, my father surprised me when he gifted me a cross on a chain. He had either given up on me, or he knew something then that I did not know. Well, that made me hyphenate, because I became a cross-wearing Hindu-Indian. Or so the family joke went. One of our closest family friends in Delhi was a Sikh family whose son was my Rakhi brother. And one of my 2 best friends in high school was a Muslim whose mother, Auntie Nikhat, made the best sevai in the world on Eid, for which I never failed to show up. So that made me, of course, a cross-wearing, Eid-celebrating Sikh sister, Hindu-Indian. After I came to America, I fell in love with a British man. He's half Desi now. Indeed, by his own admission, if you are what you eat, he's 90% Indian. As others who've married outside their faith or culture or caste would warrant, my husband and I, we had our own journeys to embrace each other's cultural identity. I distinctly remember being in a cinema hall, sitting next to him watching a period film, with the British Prime Minister making his famous speech announcing to his people in 1939 that their country was at war. And I remember hearing my husband speak the words of that speech verbatim. So I turned to him and I saw in his face the same pride as I had felt many times when listening to old speeches of Indian freedom fighters and leaders. And I realized, through the common bond we shared of pride in one's own history, my husband's cultural identity had become part of my identity. So I became a cross-wearing, Eid-celebrating, Sikh sister, Brit, Hindu-Indian. My late father-in-law was Polish. When he was just 5 years old at the outbreak of World War II, he and his mother were rounded up by the Russians and sent off to a labor camp in Siberia. He never tired of telling stories of that time and of how the Polish people won their independence through the non-violent resistance of the Solidarity movement. And as I listened to his stories and shared his pain of subjugation and his joy of winning the independence through non-violent means, a deep part of me felt his history, owned his history too, so you know what happened, right? I became across swearing, each celebrating Sikh sister, braid, Polish, Hindu, Indian. And last year was a major hyphen edition when I became, after many years, a US citizen taking the oath to serve the constitution of my beloved adopted land. And I became a cross-swearing, each celebrating Sikh sister, braid, Polish, American, Hindu, Indian. So while preparing for this talk, I thought of what my father knew and was confident of. And I realized the fluidity of identity, of faith, of culture, that is Hinduism. He gave me the secure, proud, pluralistic identity of being a Hindu and put me on a quest to find the truth, which finally taught me that truth is hyphenated. And it is the hyphen that allows us to grow past our borders and boundaries into a world of belonging. So I could call myself a cross-wearing, each celebrating Sikh sister, Brit, Polish, American, Hindu, Indian, or I could spare the oxymoron. All I'm really saying is, I am a Hindu. Because that is the thread that allows me, that is the thread that allows me to be a part of so many threads, so many identities, so many hyphens, and yet be me. The appreciation of the hyphenate identity that my father started in me then took me on a journey from Delhi to Hollywood to Threads 2019, where I stand before you today, a director, producer, writer, editor. Thank you. Namaste.
She is a dreamer. She's never satisfied with the knowledge she already has. An inquisitive thinker. She's a fine artist and an interior designer. A fine lady who makes house a home. Please welcome our last speaker of the evening, philanthropist and homemaker, Vandana Sharma.
I need an extra minute. While we are so eager about STEM for our girls, I just wanted to remember the roots. Among the plethora of professional categories celebrated here at Threads, the mother of all professions is the homemaker. The homemaker had played a great role in creating a blemish-free fabric of our society and nation. And ever so quietly and patiently, they had woven an environment mentally fit for everyone around her. And yet, she's astoundingly undervalued. Just look at the mental health statistics these days. They are crying out for help. Therefore, I choose to draw the much needed attention on the homemakers. On one hand, we do not account for their work for any worth, and on the other hand, they themselves feel like a dying breed, mustering courage for heavyweight designations for themselves, like that she's the home manager or a CEO of her home, or similar, sad. That there is a hesitation in being associated with the stigma of being just a housewife. I found this quote in a magazine, Hinduism Today, quote, "A homemaker is a powerful and an influential position that should be held in an awe, not in disgrace. Let us hold the hand of every woman who finds contentment in making home and family a priority. And tell her that she is not less, she is more. She is a dying breed. And she is valuable beyond words," unquote. Ever since the Industrial Revolution, we are facing multitudes of issues namely the global warming, methane in air, plastic pollution in waters, and while there is a rise in global population, yet there is loneliness and depression. Thus, we desperately seek more sustainable and less chaotic ways in life. To reverse this chaos, we need to bring our focus on the homemakers of the world. The de-evaluation of the homemaker, as we Hindu prefer to call her as Devi, the giver, the blesser of the household, and rightly so, has caused this uproar. Thus, I present to you the golden, sacred, Sanatan Dharmi tradition of the Hindu homemaking. It is specifically addressing to the women as the homemakers. This golden system, perhaps with lesser conveniences, but definitely with lesser stress, much more mindful and peaceful, thus peaceful way of life. I wanted to coin the term peaceful way of life so that this life is not a blur. She helps you savor it. Sanatan Dharma means practicing sustainability in all aspects so that the life is everlasting for all beings, living and non-living beings. Dharmi means one who self-imposes worthy regulation upon herself or himself for the larger good. This golden tradition is precisely captured in 1918's paintings of S. Rajam. Those depict the daily rituals performed by Hindu wives and homemakers all over India during his time and for centuries before him. A 14-piece sequence of a day from morning to dusk applied even to this day in rural India, consciously touching upon all the elements of nature upon which the entire family thrives. Upon which, while the urban homemakers are squabbling for their existence as they are uprooted from their traditional settings. Traditionally, the Hindu homemaker is a guardian, bringing joy to herself first and then radiating to the people around her, invigorating life. She celebrates by wrapping herself in colorful attires, putting some flowers in her hair, straightening her chakras by energizing by energizing her third eye with a power dot called the bindi, offering few power prayers to whom she believes in, behold, as she starts her enchanting day. Our festively dense Hindu calendar also helps her mark what could be a mundane day into a special one, with special recipes to go with, a few minutes of rituals to mark the essence of that day. There is no place for deprivation or depression in her life. My precedent case study, my mother, a well-educated woman, a full-time homemaker of 55 years, raised 3 successful children. She has recently published 2 books. After fulfilling her duties as a daughter-in-law, daughter, wife, mother, sister, grandmother, the way she cared for all my grandparents so lovingly was incredible. She has never missed her morning or evening Aarti rituals. She observed every single date in the Hindu calendar with utmost enthusiasm and reverence. I would return from school to a delicious surprise of prasad or some bequest for my drawings on the wall for symbolic ritualistic fun together. She saved the world each kernel of rice and dal at a time as they mischievously escaped her rinse and tried to make their way into the kitchen sink. And her sincere answers to me why she was saving each kernel has made me into an environmentalist and a savior of farmers as I work on many philanthropic projects. If most people cooked and ate at home, there will be less food waste, subsequently less methane in the environment, lesser plastic pollution, not to mention spiritually blessed food to balance the mind, applying Ayurvedic food principles to balance the doshas in accordance to weather and climate, just as my grandma would have insisted. From my mom's kitchen, only compost came out. not a lot of plastic, as she had time to consciously think about the environment. These days, professional women are so easily falling back on the plastic in their mindless pursuit of happiness in a rush and go. No time to think for the environment? Is it really somebody else's job? Really? Whose? While USA's trash containers are being declined, I think it's eventually our job. Accept it. My thoughts are validated by Vandana Natu in her words, Hinduism Today quote. We often mistake money, ambition, and status as a standard of productivity. But don't we admire the inherent nobility of our grandmothers who chose to selflessly nurture a human being from infancy to adulthood out of sheer duty and love, unquote? But homemaking comes in two parts. The husband provides and keeps the marriage gratifying and fulfilling for his wife, and is the strong second part of the successful homemaker equation. Only if he values his wife's presence at home can this arrangement be equitable. Here I also want to acknowledge that some full-time homemakers neglect home too. They are certainly not better than any working women. And then there are working women who stretch themselves to fulfill both roles somehow. Though the very successful ex-CEO of Pepsi, Indra Nooyi, in her very famous interview acknowledged that women can't have it all. It's just simply impossible. I too pursued a career to be a successful designer, but at heart, I've always been a homemaker. Being a homemaker is not an easy task. Like any other job, it comes with many challenges, ups and downs. With faith in the Lord, with divine teachings of various gurus, I propelled. Working women get acknowledged easily. Thus, I wanted to take the opportunity to bring attention and acknowledgement to the great works of the homemakers who are plugging insane hours day in and day out, ever so quietly, spinning beautiful threads to be woven into the fabric of this great nation. Finally, I would like to extend my sincere thanks to all of you homemakers within you all here, regardless of the gender. Your work is highly appreciated, so I thank you all. Thank you.
Please give a round of applause to all the speakers once again. I now request all the speakers to please come up on the stage. All the speakers, please come up on the stage. I know everyone is excited to hear their stories, and I am going to open floor for the questions. As I had said earlier, volunteers in the room will come and collect the questions. Please have the speaker's name next to your question. Speakers have about 40 seconds to answer due to the sensitivity of time. And I would like to say one thing. In the age of gender inequality, I can say that at this platform, we have 11 females, and including me, 12 females and 1 male. And we have youth voices as well that was heard. Thank you.